Thank you, everyone, for all of the fruitful discussion, conversation, and to the facilitators of the event, because it's been really great thus far, I think. I am also really excited to share with you all how to strategically incorporate video into your production flow. So as mentioned, my name is Muriel Schneider. I'm a senior art director and creative consultant, formerly a producer specializing in photo and video production. I've worked in-house and in a freelance capacity for a number of different brands, primarily in the fashion and beauty spaces, but also across tech. And I've noticed in my long journey that video is a really intimidating medium. It is also a very powerful medium. It can really convey an emotion. It can connect with a consumer. It can resonate in a way that sometimes still images just can't, whether that's showing a product in a specific way, garnering a certain emotion, or resonating with your consumer, meeting them really where they are mentally and emotionally. So this footage that you're seeing here, this was a swimwear campaign that I worked on during my time at Everlane. And much like swimming in a beautiful pool on a sunny day, when things are going well from a production perspective, they can be truly happening seemingly swimmingly and seamlessly. However, with this particular shoot, as gorgeous as this footage is, I hate to tell you that it ended up on the cutting room floor. It never saw the light of day because in reality, we were up against a ton of circumstances that just did not set us up for success. Namely, we didn't have clear strategic directive from our marketing partners. We didn't have a clear and aligned budget. And we didn't have the right team executing to end up with the final result that we needed. Subsequently, and beyond our control, there was a global pandemic afoot. This was on March 14th, 2020. So little did we know the world was about to shut down. We also, Everlane's headquartered in San Francisco. A big chunk of the crew had flown down from San Francisco to LA to shoot the swimwear campaign because we thought LA sun. Of course, as you can see, it was raining. So because we didn't have a clear directive and a clear understanding of what we needed to create from a video perspective, what the final use case was going to be, we ultimately spiraled. We saw the rain clouds literally and metaphorically. We heard the chatter of the world shutting down. Some of those things we can't control, I admit. However, we started just throwing money at problems. People started bickering with each other. And then when the creative strategy, which was never quite aligned on in the first place, shifted to adapt to the landscape, the footage died along with it. So overall, if you walk away from my presentation with one little nugget, my nugget is to ask yourself, what's the why? We are all creative problem solvers in this room, but it's impossible to solve a problem if the problem is never clearly defined, if you don't know what you're trying to solve for. So when you are creating video or tasked with creating video, or even just thinking about adding it as a supplemental asset to a campaign or to your capabilities as an internal studio, understand why you're creating the video in the first place. Get a clear strategy from your marketing department or the powers that be. Align on a budget, and this will help inform your creative ideation, your production scale, timelines, budget, etc. Over the course of this presentation, I'm going to break this down into 3 categories of video content creation. These are the 3 I've encountered most often in my career. I'm also going to show practical examples within each category of that video production and give you details that I honestly probably shouldn't be sharing with you, but we're among friends, as I said. So, and you're all nice, as I also said. So I'm going to give you nitty-gritty details so that you can take this, run with it. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but video doesn't have to be as scary as it seems. So the first category that I'll discuss is PDP video. And we've actually talked about this over the course of a few different presentations today. When I am going to dive into PDP video, I'm going to look at it from a couple different lenses. This is, in my mind, how do we best maximize budget and technological capabilities? Because as mentioned, a lot of brands either don't have the budget or the website to support this video, so what value does it bring? If your organization determines this is something we want to try, test into, or something that we really think would add value, there are ways to hack it. So the first way is through what I'm calling editorial PDP video. Carlos's presentation put me as a US art director to shame because European video in an editorial sense is, in my opinion, very covetable and beautiful. Ours is a little more commercial, or at least these examples are. These are from my time at Stitch Fix. So this was a campaign in which we collaborated, and when I say we, I mean a photo-specific art director and me as a video art director, aligning on all elements of production. We had one shared budget, a shared location, we shared models across all of the different sets on that location, same set design, et cetera. So we leveraged the entirety of our crew and really just scheduled the day accordingly so that everybody got dedicated time with all of the elements of the production. We then, therefore, made the decision that these images would, or excuse me, these videos would live on PDP pages and provide supplemental mood, vibe, and be less about showcasing the product in a really practical way. And from a video crew perspective, the team was, we brought in an external DP, a first AC and grip, and then I, as a video art director, directed the talent and that DP as well. Next category within PDP video is what I'm calling standard PDP. So this is something that I think is a little bit more traditional and maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say outdated, but I'm seeing fewer and fewer people do it. It is where you'll see on the left, I think, yes, that static image. And then there will be video that complements that image in a similar art direction. And it's really intended to showcase just a hit of motion. The art direction is consistent across both, as you can see. And the way that we achieved this in my time at Everlane specifically is that we had in-house photographer, videographer, and equipment that we owned and maintained, and we had 2 bays set up all the time. So we would book the same model, they would get shot in a look on the photo set, they'd walk over to the video set, we'd capture them video, it would be walk on, do a little whatever, walk off. And then the in-house videographer also acted as the editor and handled all post-production for that as well. It wasn't the fastest way to get things done, but we determined a very manageable shot count, and for the needs of the business at that time, we were able to make it happen no problem. And then I think the key thing is that there is consistent art direction. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel every time you have a PDP shoot. It's really just making sure that the creative is predetermined and consistent shoot to shoot. Narrative video. I'm going to play audio on the next couple that you'll see. The way that I differentiate narrative video from PDP video is that narrative video tells a little bit of a story. There may be additional production elements like voiceover. There might be an external production company that's involved. There might be a higher budget, potentially not. All of these things are intended to really tell a visual story in a different way with more of a plot-driven underlying theme there.
Do comfortable bras even exist? They do. Third Love's 24/7 t-shirt bra is the most comfortable bra you'll ever wear, with details designed to fit, feel, and look great. Bra with itchy tags? You'll wonder how you ever wore them. Comes in a range of neutrals and forms to your body. We also invented half-cup sizes so you always get the right fit. So comfortable, you'll forget you're wearing it. Third Love, because you deserve a better bra.
Okay, so the reason that I chose this example is that there are 2 different ways that you can go about narrative video. I think there's an in-studio path and there's a location-based path. This is obviously an in-studio example. We were tasked with the project of, we want to shoot a commercial. It's going to run on broadcast, OTT. We're also going to slice and dice for social, all the things. How can we get our name across, create brand recognition, and have the consumer walk away with key elements of what our product is and what the value propositions are for that product? The budget all in for this was $70K. $20K of that was for talent. So we were left with $50K for production. Might be high to some of us, low to others. It can be tough if you're trying to like really all in, get a broadcast shiny, perfect spot for that amount, or at least it was when we were crunching the numbers with all of the asks from marketing. But we had a really clear directive from our marketing partners, and the intention was to really create that brand recognition, that name, and lean more heavily into copy. We had 1 month of pre-production. We kept a really limited crew, and really decided to create this sort of monochromatic world and rely less on the set dressing to drive home the fact that we're seeing beautiful people in our beautiful product. We had 2 weeks of post-production for this, and there was an in-house editor. So on the flip side of this, I'm actually not going to play this with audio because I'm running out of time. But this is an example from Everlane. This was shot on location. And the usage was very similar for this video in that it was intended to be for broadcast. It's around the same length. And our budget was double. So with that in mind, that can go really quickly because we have all these locations to cover. We needed additional production company support to handle all the logistics and the company moves and whatnot. So it's really understanding the why in what are we trying to say and show, and is this the best use of our spend? So in this instance, it was the best use of our money to get this location, get all the varying production elements sorted. But you can also do something similar with the same intention in an in-studio environment. Something I forgot to mention with the previous example, which I'm sure you may have noticed, we even skimped on the voiceover artist. That was my voice. I wanted to call that out in case any of you were like, is she an egomaniac? Or I acknowledged that it was weird. I just put it out there. Okay, last category, or not last category, because there are certainly more beyond the 3 that I'm mentioning here, but the third category that I'll be discussing is social video. So we are all slaves to our phone, and if you're not, good for you, but I am at least a slave to my phone, and our consumers are certainly slaves to their phone. They're interacting with brands on social media, and that's oftentimes where they're discovering brands, where they're really truly interacting with them in a tangible way. So it's important to think about if you're creating video content and the why behind that is to hook a customer or meet them where they are, and that's on social media. I have some ideas of different ways that you can create that content. The first example, and I am going to play the sound, is thumb stopping. So as you can hear, there's kind of a fun sound design here. This was a project that I did in my time at Everlane. It was a collaboration with Oceana for Black Friday. And the intention was to really stand out amongst other content that you might see in your feed at the time or in our consumers' feed. So stop the scroll, as I like to say. We thought that whether or not they were listening to it with audio, they would be compelled to continue learning more because it was so arresting visually. And if they were listening with audio, it was a sound that you weren't used to hearing. This is another thumb-stopping example. This is from my time at Good American.
With 2 new fabrications that are so soft.
I have to pause it because I'm that weird person who ASMR gives me the heebie-jeebies. So working on that project was not the best for me. Thumb-stopping in a different way because Good American is co-founded by a celebrity, Khloe Kardashian. And so we were able to really leverage that and also lean into a social media trend. Whether or not you have a celebrity at your disposal, there are so many things trending on social media, depending on what platforms you're on, and your consumers certainly on multiple platforms, that you can really start to iterate, test new things, throw spaghetti at the wall, and have fun in the social space. This was a shoot that she was already booked for. We were capturing B-roll content, and we had this idea. We were tasked with, okay, we need to shoot some supplemental, sort of disruptive, social-first video. How do we do that? ASMR was really hot at the time, and the jeans that we were selling were called soft tech denim. Our wheels started turning what's soft? Somehow ASMR came up. Anyway, all of that is to say, the only incremental cost that we needed to incur was the support to have audio set up so that as soon as she walked off set, we had 5 minutes with her. She did a couple quick takes. Bing, bang, thank you. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, I think is what I meant to say. I don't think bing, bang, thank you is a phrase. So maximizing or capitalizing on existing content creation is another way that you can produce additional social media content. And this is a good example of that. So this is another example from my time at Everlane. This was piggybacking off of an editorial photo shoot. We just had our in-house shooter pop up. This was actually shot on the roof at Everlane's office, and we had our in-house videographer pop up with his camera. We used the natural light. We leveraged all the same art direction elements, and we were just okay, get something that looks pretty. We'll jazz it up in the edit. So that was a way in which we were able to create content specifically for social media, but also this could be leveraged on a PDP. Last but not least, within the social category, I have a category called photo as video. So these videos were all taken when I was working with Native. Native is primarily a deodorant brand, but they make other skincare products as well. So venturing into the CPG space, which this works really nicely for, but also obviously people are creating gifts all the time for different industries. It's really compelling, really captivating, something that's nice to tack on to a shot list to have for social if you need a use case for it. I think that in piggybacking off of a photo shoot, you can sort of be opportunistic, but it is also totally possible to have a dedicated shoot with its own separate budget that is exclusively creating these GIFs or these stop motion images. The budgets for these range wildly. They can be I've seen them anywhere from like 5K to 30K, depending on the photographer you hire, the lighting, the crew, the concept, etc. I will also say, and I intended to put a picture of this in here, but you can find me after and I can show you, I have done a lot of really scrappy shoots where I just did one last week where I showed up and we took over a corner of the office next to a window, got some beautiful light, natural light. We had a camera, we had the products that we needed to shoot, and we did it ourselves. So if you have the gumption and the idea, you can certainly do it for much less. We did pay for a manicure for the person whose hands were in it, so that was like a $40 cost. But all of that is to say, as previously mentioned, diving into video can be really scary, but I encourage you all to jump in because the water ultimately ends up being fine unless there's a global pandemic or it's raining. But the water is fine. There is so much opportunity, and as I mentioned earlier, there's so much you can do within the 3 categories that I discussed within PDP video, within narrative video, and within social video. There's so much opportunity if you have clear direction, alignment on a budget, intention to meet the consumer where they are and really try to make something that resonates with them, and the determination and the desire to get creative. Obviously, we're all creative people or creatively inclined, and what breaks through is thinking differently, solving problems, maybe in a way that you wouldn't have necessarily intended to in the first place. And for me, at least, I won't speak for everyone, I find that some of my best ideas come when I'm a little bit more confined and restricted, and to avoid down the line reshooting anything, spending more money than I need to, etc. Having those parameters enables the concept that'll resonate the most to flourish. Thank you guys so much. I am happy to have given you this talk. I am now at a loss for words now that I'm done. And I'm here for questions.
All right. Let me show that. All right. We all know the drill now. Oh, sweet. Well, that was great. Thank you. I'm sure that helped answer some questions, but
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm sure there's more. So what are your thoughts on the video first approach, shooting video first and taking stills from there?
That is a great question. My thoughts are that in a perfect world, everyone would be lovely and flexible and there wouldn't be any egos. So in theory, I think it's totally doable because I know oftentimes it's the opposite, where there's a still shoot booked and a videographer is having to zoom around and get shot B-roll or whatever it is, shots around the photo crew, which is not always ideal, but they're used to it for the most part and they do a great job in my experience. Whenever I've tried to pitch it the other way, I've gotten a lot of pushback from photographers, just going to be honest. I think it's the most success that I've had has been in allocating specific time slots for both teams to have on set, even if it's a shared set. And if anybody can be opportunistic and shoot around the other, that's great, but that's their own initiative to do so.
Interesting. How did you make the jump from in-house to freelance?
I made the jump. Something I didn't mention when I gave my little intro is that I'm a former producer turned art director. And the reason I went freelance was I did not want to be exclusively a producer anymore. And my entire network up until that point knew me as a producer. And so when it came time when I decided to pull that trigger, it was really hard for me to like market myself all of a sudden as like, hey, surprise, I'm an art director now. So that I sort of was forced into freelance, and then it kind of snowballed. And when I say I'm a creative consultant, as annoying as that term can be, I really do consult on the breadth of my experience, and I think one really helps inform the other. So I think marketing yourself and finding the skills that you do, whether or not it fits neatly into one box, is another way to get into freelance from a full-time gig.
All right. How do you suggest making PDP video a reoccurring, trackable, and efficient part of the production workflow?
I think it's such a loaded question. I think that making sure that you're staffed correctly is my biggest recommendation from an operations standpoint. So having someone at the helm who is working cross-functionally with the creatives, but also with the key business stakeholders, either from the marketing side, from the leadership team, so that they can really liaise between what the needs are for the business and then how the production and the creative needs to scale to meet those needs. And then from a tracking perspective, I am personally really bad at numbers, so I would put that on that person too. Just someone who is handling the higher level things and taking the creative off of the creative's plates, because I've seen the biggest train wrecks when someone who is a creative but potentially in a leadership role is responsible for that side of things and is expected to try to execute on both, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just kind of another part of that question, in discussions that you've had, what do you see are the biggest blockers for companies or brands that are thinking about adding it to PDP? Mm-hmm. What are the reasons why they say they can't or won't?
It's oftentimes a budget constraint
Okay.
or a web design constraint.
We were just having this conversation the other day.
Yeah, it's either an issue with the tech isn't there,
Yeah.
or the site can't support it. I can't tell you how many times I've been told, go capture some footage, maybe we can use it on site, and then I go and I capture the footage and they're like, the site won't do it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
it'll
no.
crash the site or whatever. So
Yeah, and those are what I've heard, and so I just was curious if you, in your experience, have heard the same thing. So
Yeah.
that's
definitely.
I guess it's true.
Can confirm.
For the standard category of video, do most shoot in 1080, 4K, or 8K?
4K in my
4K,
experience.
and
Yeah.
that's for PDP and narrative and. Okay. What type of video do you think is most effective in place of the dated style of PDP videos? Are narrative videos the best option?
I think that this goes back to Carlos's presentation this morning, and just me as a online shopaholic. I love to load up a cart and then not buy anything, but I think Zara does it really, really well. I am always captivated by the videos that they have. They're very artful. They show select product. It gives me a snapshot at what the offering is without going into every single SKU. So I would say more editorialized video as opposed to narrative video, just because of the technological capabilities not being able to support narrative as much, and then you lose the intention of that narrative piece if you're like telling a story or trying to get something across that they need to be paying attention to.
Okay. What, in your opinion, would be the main reasons for brands to invest in video for standard PDP?
Honestly, in my personal opinion, to build brand equity from a body inclusivity perspective. I think it's really helpful to see different body types. This is coming from the fashion retail space, particularly at Good American. We don't do video PDP, but I think if they were to come to me and say we wanted to, I would recommend, okay, let's make sure that we're showing it on bodies that really speak to the value propositions of the product and really speak to the issues of the consumer. If the consumer wants a waistband that's not going to slip, as an example, or not going to gap rather, then like let's show them that. Let's show them on a body that that has that particular issue, and let's show them doing something in which that would be an issue. So that is what be one of the main reasons, in my opinion. But also curious to hear what you guys think too, because I'm sure there are others that I'm not considering. But it's expensive, and it's like you got to keep the art direction consistent, otherwise you're redoing your site all the time. So I think it can be a big project to decide we're going to do it, and it's going to look like this forever, or not forever, but like for enough time to make it worth the effort to get it up in the first place.
All right. Do you expect the cost-effective option of smaller production product shoots to rise in popularity over the next few years compared to standard, larger budget productions, that is?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I, double-edged sword, but was lucky enough to start out agency side. And it was a really good arena in which to cut my teeth and get some practical experience. However, it was kind of at the tail end of really big productions, lots of money being thrown around, etc. And over the past decade or so, as I'm sure you guys are all experiencing, new brands are popping up all the time. Their budgets are not huge. And as new brands emerge, and I'm only getting older, so younger people are coming up, you're not necessarily getting people who are as familiar with those larger scale shoots or who have the wherewithal to know this is how much they cost, this is everything that goes into them. So I think people want it better and faster, and it's such a, I mean, technology is changing all the time. We can shoot things on our phone now, so I think there's a lot of like, well, if we can just do it this way, let's just do it this way, as opposed to the razzle-dazzle big shoot.
Yeah, and I've had the conversation fairly often about just the way that cameras and lighting and everything has just come down in cost so much that it really does make it a lot more obtainable for smaller budgets now.
True.
So that's good news for us.
One more thing actually on that. I'm also, at least in my experience, encountering more multi-hyphenates, people who can shoot or operate a camera, who can style clothes, who can do X, Y, and Z, so that you don't need as many people. You don't need the production to be as big to facilitate.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
that
guys
was fantastic.
so much. Thank you. Thank you.